So this is probably not going to be a popular take, and I'm okay with that. I have not made a video in a while, mainly due to starting several projects and then it turned into something else, or I have no idea where to go with it, along with being my own mechanic and changing a catalytic converter attached to an exhaust manifold, and developing a very unhealthy obsession with hydroneer in the past week. But I was visiting my parents because they're letting me work on my car in their driveway and using their tools. One night I sat down with them and watched Sonic 3. I did something similar with the Mario movie, and my dad was cynical as I expected. I did watch it in theaters back in December, and I made a video that I did not publish for multiple reasons, and by the time I got through recording it, I did not like it. But after watching it again and talking with a friend, I decided to make a whole new video. By the title of the video, you can tell that I think this movie is bad or dumb. And part of the reason why I sat on the first video, I wanted to watch it again and forgot about it till I watched it with my parents. After a second viewing, I feel like I can express myself better about what I dislike about the movie. My exposure to Sonic is mainly through osmosis. The 90s cartoon, a bit of the 2000s cartoon, along with Sonic on the Game Gear and later Sonic Frontiers, along with just sort of YouTube videos every now and then covering the various Sonic games that have come out throughout the decades. So I familiarized myself a bit better with some of the games, playing part of Shadow the Hedgehog on the GameCube, but quickly realized that it was not Shadow's first appearance, and looked online and found out his first appearance was in Sonic Adventure 2. I do not have a Dreamcast, and I'm not familiar with Dreamcast emulation, so I watched a couple of playthroughs of the game. So I'm going to have to ask you to forgive my B-roll I'm using. I'm not good at the game, and it was my second time playing through the level. I recorded the first playthrough, but because reasons, I could not import the footage to my editing software. I will say I wish the controls were a bit stiffer and maybe the game a bit slower. Also, I would use footage from the movie. I'm not entirely sure how forgiving Paramount is. I might try to add some. If you don't see any, it's because it got flagged at some point or another during the whole entire process of uploading the YouTube video. Anyways, back to the movie. I will give credit where credit is due. The writers committed the cardinal sin of either being familiar with the source material or becoming familiar with it. A huge no-no in Hollywood nowadays. I have no doubt this resonated with Sonic fans, but I digress. One problem I have with the movie is similar to that of the Mario Brothers movie or the Wolverine movie. Sure, on the first watch they are amusing, and I did have issues with my initial viewing. But after multiple viewings, I came to a similar conclusion to that of the Super Mario Bros. Movie. It's packed full of fan service with tons of visual and audio distractions in place of a competent plot. It is a disturbing trend with media in general. With the success of movies like the Super Mario Brothers, Deadpool, Wolverine, and even Sonic 3 at this point, they would fall into a category that I would call fun but dumb. At first I thought it was just Tom and Maddie, but it was every character, except for maybe Christian Ritter's character, Director Rockwell. Everyone's line delivery was over the top and felt exaggerated. This next part may get me some flack, but the worst of them all was Jim Carrey. I have watched him since his Mask and Ace Ventura days, so Jim Carrey being weird is nothing new. But it kind of feels like the director should have reined him in a bit. I have no doubt that some scenes were written for him, but his acting was way over the top in comparison to the previous entries. Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Shadow, on the other hand, seem to fit right in. This is probably due to them all being animated. But I did find Sonic a bit annoying this time with him making too many quips. To the point Deadpool would even groan with annoyance. I did like Idris Elba as Knuckles, and the other voice actors had a good performance in terms of their delivery. Although one person said Keanu phoned it in, but his stoic delivery was a relief in contrast to everyone else's. Getting back to the scenes, there were some that were intended as nothing but a joke, and maybe a bit of padding, most of them involving Jim Carrey. I kind of get his first scene where he has turned into a fat slob, making his appearance more in line with that of the games. But when he shows up as Gerald Robotnik, it gets weirder and fast. Most of the scenes, like I have said previously, felt like they were written just for him to act weird. The whole scene where he was having his father son moment in VR added nothing to the movie. Then there was the dance scene in the Hall of Lasers where they had a full on dance routine. Never mind the fact that their heads were still exposed. It was just bizarre. Lastly, there was the fight scene between Ivo and Gerald. The acting again was over the top because it's Jim Carrey, but it was also very awkward to watch. Jim's movements were odd, even with the CG covering parts of him up. If I were to guess, it was due to his movements needing to be captured so the CG could be added in post. On top of that, Donald was killed unceremoniously by being poked in the butt by one of Sonic's quills. In a very cartoonish manner, I might add. And it's not just Jim's scenes either. After Shadow beats the trio and they went to the eatery, as Tails put it, it felt very intentional but very out of place. I did chuckle a bit when the girls asked Tails if he was Detective Pikachu. Well, I should say Knuckles' comment made me laugh a bit for whatever reason.
He does look like a Pokemon! Pika Pika!
When Tom and Maddie went undercover as Maddie's sister, I had to wonder how or why she married Randall after the second movie, and how did she join Gunn as well as work with Randall as a couple. The worst part is she kind of acted like a bit of a stereotype. The biggest grievance I have was when Sonic and Shadow talk in space where there is no atmosphere. But okay. The plot is kind of bare bones, and that is kind of expected of movies based off of video games, or in this case, video game characters. Even though this particular movie takes a lot from Sonic Adventures 2. I want to say Adventures, but it's Adventure for whatever reason. The plot was bare bones, and that is kind of expected of movies based off of video game characters, even though it takes a lot from Sonic Adventure 2. In some cases, it's very predictable. Like when Tom went into Sonic's hideout from the first movie, which I might point out, it seems like it was the first time he went into his hideout, even though at the end of the first movie, the Wachowskis moved all of Sonic's stuff from the hideout to their attic. Then they had the whole line of Sonic trusting his heart was obviously going to come back later, and I knew something was going to happen to Tom as soon as they had their heart to heart. The same thing occurred with Shadow and Maria. I knew their conversation would come into play later on. In Shadow's case, it was a bit cliche and used the whole stars burn brighter but shorter thing we have seen numerous times in other movies and in other forms of media in general. I'm not going to go into too much detail. If I do that, probably turned into a multi-part series, and that took forever to get through with just Mario movie. I just wanted to point out the really obvious parts that kind of made this movie look dumb. Like the VR scene where Gerald and Iva were having their father son moment. Yes, from the first movie, he said he was adopted. I get that, but it was way too Jim Carrey for its own good, if that makes any sense. Overall, it was filled with audio and visual noise with lots of weird moments, mainly coming from Jim Carrey, with constant jokes and scenes that felt like they were there to pad out the movie and to hide the bare bones plot. Unfortunately, due to its success, I'm sure we will get more movies like this, and not just Sonic 4 movie that is already on the way. Anyways, I could go in more depth, like I said previously, but I'm not going to. Anyways, if you made it this far, thanks for watching.